Samuel Adams had a young cousin named John. "I have heard of one, Mr. Adams," said King George to the Massachusetts governor, "but who is the other?" The other honest, serious John Adams would become even more famous than Sam. Sam was an agitator and an organizer who helped start a revolution. John was a farmer and a lawyer, a solid citizen who helped lead the revolution. Someone who knew John Adams said that he possessed more learning than anyone in the colonies. That may not have been an exaggeration. John had done a lot of reading and studying, and he knew how to use his mind. Here is a story about both Adams' cousins, the story of the Boston Massacre. A massacre, as you may know, is a gruesome killing. That's what happened in Boston in 1770. The story begins in 1765 when the English Parliament passed a law that said American citizens had to provide quarters for British soldiers. The quarters they were talking about are not the kind you get when you add 2 dimes and a nickel. Quarters can also be houses where English soldiers live. The law was called the Quartering Act. English soldiers who were called redcoats because of the color of their uniforms were to be quartered in American towns and cities. Well, the Americans didn't want British redcoats quartered in their towns or cities or even their country. So when the soldiers arrived in 1768, the colonists weren't very kind to them. Sometimes they made fun of them, sometimes they threw snowballs or rocks, sometimes they called them lobsterbacks or worse names. The people in Boston were especially annoyed and at first wouldn't even provide quarters. So the soldiers set up tents on the Boston Common, a big grassy area in the center of town, and played their drums and bugles loudly at the most inappropriate times. Most of the English soldiers didn't want to be in America anyway. They were poorly paid and many were homesick. Some ran away from the British Army. Soldiers who run away are called deserters. British deserters who were caught were shot. A few redcoats, especially the officers, were treated well. Some married American women. On a winter morning in 1770, about 150 Boston schoolchildren gathered outside the shop of Theophilus Lilly, a merchant who had chosen not to boycott British goods. The children were there to make him pay for it. One boy carried a hand-shaped sign with a pointed finger and the word importer painted on it. Taking a boost from a couple of friends, he shittied up a signpost and nailed it to the top, aiming the finger at Lily's door. A few minutes later, Ebenezer Richardson, a British customs inspector who lived in the neighborhood, came around the corner and saw the sign. He rushed towards it and tried to tear it down. Students showered him with stones, opening a gash in his head. Covering his bleeding scalp, Richardson staggered home and grabbed his musket from the wall. He stormed up to the second floor, flung open a window, took aim, and blasted a ball of lead into the crowd. 11-year-old Christopher Sider was stooping down to pick up a rock when the shot struck him in the head. He died later the same day. That shot seemed to unite the whole town against the British. 4 days later, 6 young boys carried Christopher's coffin through downtown Boston to the burial ground. The parade that followed, led by 500 children, was nearly a mile long. 2 weeks later, on the frosty evening of March 5th, 1770, tensions would lead to more bloodshed on the streets of Boston.